Principles. Life and Work by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio's Principles. Life and Work encapsulates decades of relentless pursuit of understanding, decision-making, and systems thinking. Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, doesn't merely present a memoir or guide. He lays bare the principles that allowed him to navigate catastrophic failures and achieve unparalleled success. This book is not about abstract theories but grounded, actionable wisdom drawn from a life of deliberate reflection. Dalio insists that success requires brutal honesty, a commitment to constant learning, and a structured approach to problems. You will learn that principles are universal rules for decision-making and that mastering them can transform your personal and professional life. Every story, lesson, and insight challenges you to step into a role of relentless accountability. His philosophy compels you to treat your life like a machine, optimize it for continuous improvement, and never settle for mediocrity. Lesson 1. Face reality. Dalio's insistence on facing reality begins with a moment of profound failure in 1982. Betting wrongly on an economic collapse, he nearly lost everything, from his firm to his reputation. This wasn't just a financial loss. It was a wake-up call that shattered his illusions and forced him to confront the truth about his decisions and limitations. Instead of succumbing to despair, Dalio used this failure to rebuild not only his company, but also his approach to life and decision-making. He realized that the root of his failure wasn't the market. It was his inability to see things as they truly were. This lesson is not merely about being pragmatic. It's about cultivating a discipline that forces you to stare reality in the face, even when it's uncomfortable or painful. Facing reality requires two key elements: radical open-mindedness and radical transparency. Dalio adopted these principles as cornerstones of his personal and professional philosophy. Radical open-mindedness means acknowledging that your perspective is limited and actively seeking out alternative viewpoints. Radical transparency involves stripping away pretenses and creating an environment where honesty thrives. Together, these principles dismantle the ego-driven narratives that distort your perception of reality. This echoes the Stoic philosophy in The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, where obstacles aren't barriers but opportunities to align your actions with truth. Just as Marcus Aurelius taught that you must embrace the present moment and its challenges, Dalio insists that only by accepting reality can you begin to improve it. A refusal to face reality is often rooted in fear: fear of failure, fear of being wrong, fear of judgment. Dalio's journey underscores that this fear is a self-imposed prison. When he bet on an economic downturn and was proven wrong, he could have doubled down on his mistake or retreated into denial. Instead, he humbled himself, admitted his errors, and asked for help. This vulnerability became his strength. He turned to experts, questioned his assumptions, and built systems to prevent similar mistakes in the future. His example parallels Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, who, despite facing criticism and doubt, reshaped his cabinet into a team of rivals to ensure diverse perspectives informed his decisions. Lincoln understood that no single mind, not even his, could see the full picture. Similarly, you must be willing to admit when your perspective is flawed and invite others to challenge your thinking. Facing reality also demands a scientific mindset. Dalio approached problems with the rigor of a scientist, treating each decision as an experiment. He hypothesized, tested, and adapted based on results. This method removes the emotional noise and cognitive biases that cloud judgment. In Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, the author explains how the brain's fast-thinking system often relies on intuition and shortcuts, which can lead to errors. Dalio countered this by slowing down his decision-making, relying on data and logic rather than gut feelings. To emulate this, you must train yourself to detach emotionally from outcomes and focus on the process. Treat failures as feedback, not verdicts. Reality isn't always harsh. Sometimes, it's deceptively comforting. The danger lies in seeing only what you want to see. Dalio warns against the trap of confirmation bias, where you selectively interpret information that reinforces your beliefs. He recounts how, In the aftermath of his 1982 failure, he realized how often his ego had blinded him to alternative scenarios. By learning to embrace dissent and seek truth above all else, he built a culture at Bridgewater where no idea was sacred and every assumption was up for debate. This mirrors the ethos of the scientific revolution, where pioneers like Galileo challenged dogma, risking persecution to bring humanity closer to understanding reality. To face reality in your own life, you must cultivate habits that anchor you to the truth. Start by questioning your assumptions. When problems arise, resist the urge to react emotionally. Instead, pause. Gather data, and approach the situation like an experiment. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, not those who reinforce your comfort zones. Create an environment where feedback is not just accepted, but actively sought. Most importantly, recognize that reality is your ally, not your enemy. Every problem, no matter how daunting, contains the seeds of growth if you are willing to confront it head-on. Dalio's story is a testament to the power of seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. His early failure was devastating, but it became the foundation for his later success. By adopting a scientific mindset, embracing radical transparency, and inviting diverse perspectives, you too can overcome your blind spots and make better decisions. Never let ego or bias cloud your vision. Train yourself to embrace reality with courage and curiosity, and you will unlock your true potential. Lesson 2. Evolve relentlessly. Life does not reward stagnation, it punishes it. Evolution is not just a biological principle but a universal law of progress. Dalio draws a powerful analogy between personal growth and natural selection, where only those who adapt survive and thrive. At Bridgewater, he fostered a culture of relentless evolution, treating failures as evolutionary tests that strengthened the organization. Every mistake became an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. Just as species evolve through trial and error, shedding what no longer works and embracing what does, you too must evolve relentlessly by learning from your setbacks and staying ahead of change. Dalio emphasizes that resilience and adaptability are the cornerstones of sustained success. He describes how Bridgewater's openness to change, even in its most uncomfortable forms, mirrored the adaptability of successful species. In *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, humanity's dominance is attributed to its capacity for collective learning and innovation. Humans survived while other species perished because of their ability to adapt quickly to new environments and challenges. This same principle applies to your personal and professional life. When you face obstacles, recognize them as necessary tests designed to refine and strengthen you. To resist change is to resist growth, and that resistance is what leads to failure over time. At Bridgewater, Dalio made failure an integral part of their evolution. He recounts how the firm's largest missteps often became the most valuable lessons. For instance, during the 2008 financial crisis, Bridgewater avoided disaster because of lessons learned from previous crises. The team had developed robust decision-making systems by analyzing past mistakes and incorporating those insights into their processes. This is a principle you must adopt. Treat every failure as data, a piece of feedback that sharpens your future decisions. If you ignore or hide from your failures, you miss the opportunity to adapt. Evolution demands honesty, self-awareness, and the courage to confront painful truths. The mindset Dalio advocates is strikingly similar to that of Thomas Edison, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's relentless experimentation in developing the light bulb demonstrates that success is not a single moment, but the accumulation of lessons from countless failures. Like Edison, you must embrace an iterative process of growth. Each failure isn't a setback, but a step forward, provided you learn from it. Dalio reinforces that evolution is not optional. It is essential for survival. The moment you stop evolving, whether as an individual or as an organization, you begin to decline. Dalio's view of evolution also ties closely to psychological resilience. He argues that pain and discomfort are the catalysts for growth. When you experience hardship, Your natural inclination may be to retreat or seek comfort. This is a mistake. Growth occurs at the edge of your comfort zone, where you confront your limitations and push beyond them. This aligns with Carol Dweck's concept of the growth mindset in her book, Mindset. Dweck explains that those who see challenges as opportunities for learning, rather than as threats to their abilities, consistently outperform those with fixed mindsets. To evolve relentlessly, you must adopt this attitude of constant learning and self-improvement. Evolution is not just about reacting to change, but about anticipating it. Dalio stresses the importance of staying ahead of the curve by questioning assumptions, seeking new perspectives, and preparing for the unknown. This proactive approach is evident in history's great innovators, from Charles Darwin to Steve Jobs. Jobs revolutionized multiple industries because he consistently sought to adapt and innovate, even when it meant disrupting his own successes. He understood that staying relevant required perpetual reinvention, and he never clung to past victories. This is the mindset you need. Never rest on your laurels or assume that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. To evolve relentlessly, you must develop systems for extracting lessons from every experience. Dalio recommends documenting your failures and the insights they provide, then using those lessons to refine your principles and strategies. This process turns pain into progress and ensures that every setback becomes a stepping stone. Commit to making learning a lifelong habit. Surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking and push you to grow. Seek feedback constantly, even when it's uncomfortable. Most importantly, embrace the inevitability of change and use it to your advantage. Dalio's analogy of evolution is a reminder that life's most significant breakthroughs come from adapting to its greatest challenges. If you want to thrive, you must treat every obstacle as an opportunity to grow. Use your failures as fuel, your discomfort as a guide, and your curiosity as a compass. Never shy away from change. Instead, lean into it with the confidence that every step forward makes you stronger, smarter, and more prepared for the future. Evolve relentlessly, and you will outlast and outperform those who refuse to adapt. Lesson 3. Be radically transparent. Radical transparency is one of Dalio's most defining principles, and it demands more than just openness. It requires a deep commitment to truth and accountability, even when it feels uncomfortable. At its core, radical transparency is about creating an environment where nothing is hidden, where all relevant information is shared openly, and where people feel empowered to challenge each other's thinking. Dalio recounts how this principle became a cornerstone of Bridgewater's culture, transforming the organization into one of the most innovative and effective workplaces in the world. Recording meetings, a practice initially met with skepticism, became a powerful tool for clarity and accountability. These recordings ensured that decisions were traceable, misunderstandings were minimized, and no one could evade responsibility. This level of openness, while often uncomfortable, fostered trust and elevated performance. Radical transparency challenges traditional norms of leadership and communication, where hierarchy often stifles honesty. Dalio recognized that ego, fear, and politics frequently prevent organizations from addressing the truth. He systematically dismantled these barriers at Bridgewater, insisting that every employee, regardless of rank, had the right and responsibility to voice their perspectives. This philosophy mirrors the principles in Jim Collins's Good to Great, which emphasizes that great companies embrace a culture of disciplined communication and brutal facts. Just as Collins found that successful companies confront the most challenging truths head-on, Dalio proved that transparency builds resilience and adaptability. You must cultivate this same discipline in your own life and work. Avoid sugarcoating reality, and encourage those around you to do the same. The discomfort of transparency often stems from the vulnerability it exposes. Dalio recounts moments when brutally honest feedback felt like a personal attack. Yet he learned to separate ego from truth. By focusing on the merits of the idea rather than the emotions tied to it, he created an environment where criticism became a tool for improvement, not a source of conflict. This approach is reminiscent of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, where society's rejection of uncomfortable truths leads to its intellectual and moral decay. In contrast, radical transparency seeks to preserve and elevate the truth, no matter how inconvenient. When you embrace transparency, you strip away the facades that prevent genuine growth and collaboration. Radical transparency is not limited to the workplace. It applies equally to personal relationships. Dalio argues that transparency fosters trust, the foundation of any meaningful connection. When you withhold information or avoid difficult conversations, you erode trust and create a culture of suspicion. Transparency, while initially uncomfortable, liberates you and those around you. It eliminates the guesswork and ensures that everyone operates with the same understanding. This mirrors lessons from Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, which emphasizes the importance of vulnerability in building trust and effective communication. Brown argues that showing up honestly, even when it's hard, strengthens relationships and fosters mutual respect. Transparency demands courage, but it pays dividends in trust and authenticity. Dalio also understood that transparency accelerates learning. At Bridgewater, open access to information allowed employees to learn from each other's experiences, successes, and failures. The firm's culture of recorded meetings became a living archive of collective wisdom, enabling new hires to climb the learning curve faster and more effectively. This principle applies to your own life. When you share your struggles, mistakes, and lessons openly, you create a ripple effect of learning for those around you. Transparency transforms failures into teaching moments, ensuring that setbacks lead to collective progress rather than isolated regret. To embrace radical transparency, you must first overcome your fear of judgment. Dalio's practice of radical honesty meant inviting criticism and scrutiny, even from junior employees. This level of openness requires thick skin and a commitment to personal growth. It demands that you place the pursuit of truth above your need for approval. Dalio recounts moments when his transparency was met with resistance, but over time, the practice proved its worth. Employees began to value candor over comfort, and the firm thrived on a foundation of trust and shared purpose. The lesson for you is clear. Don't let your fear of discomfort keep you from the truth. Foster an environment where honesty is not only accepted but expected. Radical transparency can transform your relationships, your team, and your life. When you commit to openness, you create a culture of accountability and trust, where problems are addressed directly and solutions emerge faster. Encourage feedback, even when it's uncomfortable. Scrutinize your assumptions and invite others to do the same. Never hide from the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. Transparency is not just a principle, it's a way of life that liberates you from the constraints of fear and ego, allowing you to operate at your highest potential. Commit to radical transparency, and you will build stronger relationships, smarter teams, and a clearer path to success. Lesson 4. Systemize your decisions. Every decision you make is an opportunity to refine your thinking and build a system that can guide future choices. Dalio's approach to decision-making transformed the way he operated, not only in business but in life. At Bridgewater, he pioneered the use of algorithms to automate investment choices, a process that turned abstract principles into precise, actionable formulas. By doing so, he removed the inconsistencies of emotional interference and created a system where decisions were driven by data and logic. This disciplined approach allowed his firm to navigate complex markets with a level of precision and consistency that human judgment alone could not achieve. Dalio's insight was simple but profound. When you systemize your decisions, you eliminate guesswork and align your actions with your long-term goals. Systemizing decisions starts with documenting your principles. Dalio insists that clear, well-defined principles are the foundation of effective decision-making. He likens principles to recipes, where each ingredient and step is carefully laid out to achieve a specific outcome. This approach echoes Daniel Kahneman's insights in Thinking, Fast and Slow, where he explains how structured thinking combats the cognitive biases that often derail our judgment. Kahneman highlights that humans are prone to errors caused by intuition and emotions, and only through deliberate, structured processes can we consistently make better choices. By documenting your principles, you create a reference guide that ensures you remain objective and grounded, even under pressure. Turning these principles into repeatable systems requires effort, but the payoff is immense. Dalio's use of algorithms at Bridgewater serves as a powerful example. He took principles that were previously subjective and converted them into measurable criteria that could be applied universally. This process didn't just improve the accuracy of decisions, it also reduced the mental burden of constantly rethinking the same problems. By automating routine decisions, you free up mental energy to focus on higher-level challenges. This principle can be applied to any aspect of life, from managing finances to maintaining relationships. For example, establishing a rule to save a fixed percentage of your income every month eliminates the need to debate whether or how much to save. Over time, these small, automated decisions compound into significant results. Systemizing decisions also allows you to learn from your mistakes. Dalio describes how each failure at Bridgewater became an opportunity to refine their systems. By analyzing what went wrong, they identified gaps in their principles and updated their algorithms accordingly. This iterative process of testing and improving mirrors the scientific method, where every experiment contributes to a deeper understanding. Similarly, you must treat your decisions as experiments. Document the rationale behind your choices, evaluate the outcomes, and adjust your principles to account for new insights. Over time, this approach creates a self-reinforcing loop of learning and improvement. The benefits of systemized decision-making are evident not only in Dalio's work, but throughout history. The Apollo space program, for example, relied on meticulously developed systems to achieve what was once considered impossible: landing humans on the moon. Every decision, from trajectory calculations to life support protocols, was guided by systems designed to minimize error and maximize success. Without these systems, the complexity and stakes of the mission would have overwhelmed even the most brilliant minds. Just as NASA relied on systems to achieve their goals, you can rely on your principles and systems to navigate the complexities of your own life. One of the greatest advantages of systemized decisions is their ability to remove emotional interference. Dalio emphasizes that emotions like fear, greed, or overconfidence can cloud judgment and lead to inconsistent choices. By following a system, you create a buffer against these emotional pitfalls. This is particularly important in high-stakes situations, where the pressure to act quickly can lead to mistakes. For example, in the world of sports, athletes like Serena Williams have credited their success to routines and systems that keep them focused under pressure. Similarly, your system becomes your anchor, ensuring that you remain steady and objective no matter how chaotic the circumstances. To implement this principle in your life, start by identifying recurring decisions that can benefit from systemization. Write down your thought process for each type of decision, from small daily choices to major life changes. Test your principles against real-world scenarios and refine them as needed. Over time, turn these principles into a playbook that you can rely on. When new decisions arise, refer to your system instead of starting from scratch. This not only saves time, but also ensures consistency and alignment with your long-term objectives. Dalio's lesson on systemizing decisions is a call to take control of your life with discipline and intentionality. Don't let emotions or circumstances dictate your choices. Build systems that guide you, improve with time, and free you to focus on what truly matters. When you commit to systemized decision-making, you eliminate uncertainty, reduce stress, and empower yourself to achieve greater clarity and success. Let your principles become your compass, and let your systems pave the way forward. Lesson 5. Build an ideal meritocracy. Dalio's concept of an ideal meritocracy is a revolutionary approach to leadership, teamwork, and decision-making. At its heart, it rejects the traditional reliance on authority, hierarchy, or volume in determining the direction of a group. Instead, it prioritizes the quality of ideas, relying on evidence, debate, and the credibility of contributors. At Bridgewater, this philosophy became the foundation for a system where the best ideas, not the loudest voices, prevailed. Dalio understood that even the most brilliant minds have blind spots, biases, and limitations, and only by harnessing collective intelligence can we make truly sound decisions. An ideal meritocracy isn't just about fairness, it's about effectiveness, and building one in your own life or organization demands rigor, openness, and a relentless pursuit of truth. To create an ideal meritocracy, Dalio implemented practices that transformed how Bridgewater operated. One of the most striking elements was his use of believability-weighted decision-making, where the opinions of individuals were weighted based on their track record and expertise in a given area. This ensured that decisions weren't dominated by seniority or charisma, but by logic and proven competence. For example, during high-stakes discussions, junior employees with expertise in a particular topic could carry as much weight as senior executives. This echoes themes in The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki, which demonstrates how diverse groups often outperform even the most knowledgeable individuals when making decisions. Collective intelligence thrives when each voice contributes uniquely, but only if the group's framework prioritizes substance over status. You must cultivate this in your environment by valuing evidence and logic over ego and authority. An ideal meritocracy thrives on diversity, not just demographic diversity, but cognitive diversity. Dalio emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with people who think differently from you, people who challenge your assumptions and push you to confront uncomfortable truths. He recounts instances at Bridgewater where disagreements led to breakthroughs because opposing viewpoints were encouraged rather than stifled. This principle is reflected in history, such as in the creation of the U.S. Constitution, where the Founding Fathers, despite their deep ideological differences, worked together to design a system of government based on debate, compromise, and collective wisdom. The lesson for you is clear. Don't surround yourself with yes men or people who merely echo your opinions. Seek out those who challenge you, even when it's uncomfortable. Creating an ideal meritocracy also requires a commitment to open debate and respect. At Bridgewater, Dalio cultivated an environment where questioning ideas wasn't just allowed, it was expected. Employees were encouraged to challenge one another's thinking, no matter their rank. This didn't mean fostering a culture of argument for its own sake. Rather, it ensured that the truth emerged through constructive dialogue. Dalio compares this to the scientific method, where hypotheses are rigorously tested and must withstand scrutiny before being accepted. Similarly, you must encourage debate that is focused on uncovering truth, not scoring points. The goal is not to win, but to arrive at the best possible solution, and that requires humility, respect, and an unwavering commitment to evidence. An ideal meritocracy eliminates the dominance of ego, making space for better decisions and greater innovation. Dalio recounts how Bridgewater's radical transparency policies, including recording meetings and making them accessible to employees, created a shared understanding that ideas were evaluated on their merit, not their origin. This practice may feel extreme to some, but it exemplifies the lengths to which Dalio went to ensure fairness and accountability. The lesson here is that transparency builds trust, and trust is the foundation of an ideal meritocracy. When people know their voices will be heard and their ideas will be considered fairly, they are more likely to engage fully and contribute their best thinking. Dalio's idea of meritocracy is not without its challenges. It requires thick skin, a willingness to accept criticism, and the discipline to separate personal feelings from the pursuit of truth. However, the rewards far outweigh the discomfort. Organizations that embrace this philosophy consistently outperform those that rely on rigid hierarchies or authoritarian leadership. Consider companies like Google, which attribute much of their success to fostering open dialogue and empowering employees at all levels to share their ideas. Similarly, in your own life or team, the key to building an ideal meritocracy is to create a culture where everyone feels safe to speak up, Ideas are rigorously tested, and decisions are made based on logic and evidence rather than power dynamics. To build your own idea of meritocracy, start by surrounding yourself with diverse thinkers who challenge your assumptions. Foster an environment of mutual respect where debate thrives, and prioritize evidence over emotion. Adopt practices that ensure transparency and accountability, such as documenting decisions and revisiting them to evaluate outcomes. Most importantly, commit to the idea that no single person has all the answers, not even you. By embracing the collective intelligence of those around you, you can make better decisions, innovate more effectively, and achieve greater success. Dalio's idea meritocracy is a bold and powerful framework for living and leading. It demands that you set aside ego and embrace humility, allowing the best ideas to prevail. Commit to this principle, and you will build teams, relationships, and systems that are not only fair, but extraordinarily effective. Let logic and evidence guide you, and you will unlock the full potential of those around you. Lesson 6. Embrace painful truths. Pain is not your enemy. It is your guide. Dalio's philosophy centers on the idea that pain is a signal, an unmistakable indication that something in your life or decisions requires change. Rather than avoiding discomfort, Dalio learned to confront it head-on, using it as a catalyst for growth and improvement. He recounts how the pain of his early failures, particularly his near collapse in 1982, forced him to reevaluate not just his business strategies but his fundamental approach to decision-making in life. This willingness to embrace painful truths, rather than suppress them, became a cornerstone of his success and a lesson you must adopt if you are to achieve your full potential. Painful truths expose weaknesses, and weaknesses are the stepping stones to growth. Dalio compares the process to weightlifting. Just as you must tear muscle fibers to build strength, you must endure the discomfort of facing your flaws to improve. This mindset aligns with the Japanese principle of Kaizen, or continuous improvement, which demands that every failure and discomfort lead to actionable change. Kaizen teaches that even small, incremental adjustments, driven by an honest assessment of what's not working, compound over time into transformative results. The same principle applies to your life. When pain arises, you must analyze its source, identify the lessons it offers, and use those insights to make lasting changes. Dalio's emphasis on embracing painful truths mirrors the resilience displayed by leaders and innovators throughout history. Consider Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, who faced relentless criticism, personal tragedy, and military failures. Rather than succumbing to despair, Lincoln confronted these painful realities with unflinching honesty. He made difficult decisions, often unpopular, that ultimately preserved the Union. His ability to endure and learn from adversity serves as a timeless example of how embracing pain leads to strength and clarity. Like Lincoln, you must resist the temptation to ignore or deflect your challenges. Instead, face them with courage and use them to sharpen your resolve. The first step in embracing painful truths is to acknowledge them without denial or blame. Dalio emphasizes that pain often triggers defensive reactions, excuses, avoidance, or anger that prevent you from learning. To overcome this, you must cultivate a mindset of radical openness. View every setback as a teacher, stripping away ego and emotional bias to uncover the lesson within. This practice is echoed in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, where Frankl highlights how suffering, when approached with purpose and reflection, can lead to profound personal growth. Pain, in this sense, is not a dead end, but a doorway to deeper understanding and transformation. Once you've acknowledged the truth, the next step is to analyze it systematically. Dalio encourages a structured approach to dissecting pain. Identify its root cause, evaluate the decisions that led to it, and determine how to avoid similar mistakes in the future. This process transforms pain into actionable knowledge. For example, at Bridgewater, Dalio implemented tools like feedback loops and pain buttons to help his team recognize and address discomfort in real time. These systems ensured that pain was never wasted. It was always channeled into improvement. You can adopt this principle by keeping a journal to document your struggles, reflecting on what went wrong, and brainstorming concrete steps to improve. Avoiding shortcuts is critical to this process. Pain often tempts you to seek the fastest route to relief, but shortcuts rarely lead to meaningful growth. Dalio argues that the only way to build lasting resilience is to confront adversity fully and work through it, rather than around it. This principle is evident in stories of athletes like Michael Jordan, whose relentless pursuit of improvement often stemmed from his failures. Jordan famously used the pain of being cut from his high school basketball team as motivation to train harder, eventually becoming one of the greatest players in history. His journey exemplifies how pain, when embraced and channeled, becomes a powerful force for success. To embrace painful truths, you must also cultivate emotional resilience. Dalio acknowledges that confronting pain is never easy. It requires strength, patience, and a commitment to growth. Surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable and provide support when the process becomes overwhelming. Build habits, such as meditation or regular reflection, that help you stay grounded during difficult times. Most importantly, remind yourself that pain is temporary, but the growth it fosters is enduring. Every time you face discomfort, you strengthen your capacity to handle future challenges, turning adversity into a source of confidence and capability. Dalio's lesson is clear. Pain is not something to be feared, but something to be harnessed. Each painful truth you confront is an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Never shy away from discomfort. Analyze its source, learn its lessons, and use it to fuel your progress. Avoid the temptation of shortcuts, and instead, commit to the long, often difficult path of real growth. When you embrace pain with courage and purpose, you transform it from a burden into your most valuable teacher. Lesson 7. Know your weaknesses. Dalio insists that recognizing your weaknesses is not a mark of failure, but a profound act of strength. Self-awareness, he argues, is the foundation for both personal growth and effective collaboration. At Bridgewater, he relied heavily on tools like the Myers-Briggs personality assessment to identify his own limitations and those of his team. This practice wasn't a gimmick or an exercise in labeling. It was a deliberate strategy to understand the gaps in his abilities and ensure those gaps were filled by others who excelled in those areas. Dalio's insight is simple but profound. You cannot be great at everything, and trying to ignore or compensate for your weaknesses without addressing them will ultimately undermine your success. Self-awareness is a skill that requires brutal honesty. Dalio emphasizes that you must confront your limitations without defensiveness or denial. Avoiding this step often leads to overconfidence, a dangerous mindset that blinds you to reality. This lesson resonates with Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence, where self-awareness is identified as a critical driver of success. Goleman explains that individuals who understand their strengths and weaknesses are better equipped to make sound decisions, manage relationships, and navigate challenges. Dalio took this principle to heart by embedding it into Bridgewater's culture, creating an environment where employees were encouraged to assess and share their strengths and weaknesses openly. You must adopt the same approach, starting with an unflinching evaluation of yourself. Knowing your weaknesses is not about dwelling on your flaws, it's about leveraging this knowledge to build a support system. Dalio stresses the importance of assembling teams that complement your blind spots. At Bridgewater, he surrounded himself with people whose skills and perspectives differed from his own, ensuring that the organization functioned as a cohesive and balanced unit. This principle mirrors the approach taken by Steve Jobs, who, despite his visionary genius, relied heavily on a team of skilled technologists and business leaders to execute his ideas. Jobs' collaboration with Steve Wozniak, for instance, combined Wozniak's technical brilliance with Jobs' marketing and design acumen, creating the foundation for Apple's success. Similarly, you must recognize where you fall short and seek out individuals who excel in those areas. To map out your strengths and weaknesses effectively, use tools and frameworks that provide structure and insight. Dalio's use of personality assessments like Myers-Briggs or the DISC profile was not arbitrary. It gave him a framework to understand not only his own tendencies, but also those of his team. These tools reveal patterns in behavior, decision-making, and interaction, making it easier to identify where you excel and where you struggle. However, assessments alone are not enough. Pair them with honest feedback from others, particularly those who know you well or work closely with you. Dalio frequently sought feedback from his colleagues, even when it was difficult to hear. This practice ensured that his self-perception aligned with reality, a critical step in addressing weaknesses. Embracing your weaknesses requires vulnerability and humility. Dalio recounts moments when he had to acknowledge that he wasn't the best person to lead certain initiatives or make specific decisions. Rather than letting his ego get in the way, he delegated responsibility to those better suited for the task. This willingness to ask for help is a recurring theme among successful leaders. Consider Franklin D. Roosevelt, who navigated the complexities of World War II by relying on a diverse team of advisors and generals. Roosevelt understood that his role was not to know everything, but to ensure that the best minds were working together toward a common goal. You must adopt this same mindset. Asking for help is not a weakness. It is a strategic move that strengthens your outcomes. Knowing your weaknesses also enhances your ability to collaborate. When you are transparent about your limitations, you foster an environment of trust and mutual respect. Dalio's openness about his own shortcomings encouraged his team to do the same, creating a culture where people felt safe to admit mistakes and seek support. This transparency eliminates the fear of judgment and allows everyone to focus on problem-solving rather than blame. Brené Brown's work in Dare to Lead emphasizes the importance of vulnerability in leadership, showing that admitting your weaknesses not only builds trust, but also inspires others to embrace their own imperfections. To apply this principle in your life, begin with self-reflection. Take stock of your strengths and weaknesses with ruthless honesty. Use tools like personality assessments, feedback from peers, or even journaling to identify patterns in your behavior and performance. Once you've identified your weaknesses, don't stop there. Build a network of people who can fill those gaps, whether through collaboration, mentorship, or delegation. Most importantly, resist the urge to view your weaknesses as fixed or insurmountable. Instead, see them as opportunities for growth, whether through self-improvement or strategic partnerships. Dalio's lesson is a reminder that knowing your weaknesses is a strength that unlocks new possibilities. When you embrace your limitations with humility and intention, you position yourself to grow, collaborate, and succeed in ways that would be impossible otherwise. Recognize where you fall short, seek out those who can help, and never shy away from asking for support. Your weaknesses, once acknowledged, can become the foundation for your greatest strengths. Lesson 8. Foster meaningful relationships. Dalio firmly believes that success, whether personal or professional, is deeply rooted in the quality of the relationships you build. At Bridgewater, relationships weren't just a byproduct of the workplace. They were the foundation of its culture and achievements. Dalio recounts how the firm's greatest successes stemmed from a culture built on mutual respect, trust, and open communication. For him, relationships are not transactional or superficial, but deeply meaningful, built on shared values and a commitment to each other's growth. This lesson highlights that success is rarely a solitary endeavor. It is almost always the result of collaboration and connection. Meaningful relationships require trust as their cornerstone. Dalio emphasizes that trust is earned through honesty, consistency, and vulnerability. He likens trust to a bank account, echoing Stephen Covey's concept of emotional bank accounts in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Every interaction with someone either deposits into or withdraws from this account. Acts of kindness, integrity, and reliability build trust, while dishonesty, neglect, or broken promises deplete it. Dalio's experiences at Bridgewater demonstrated that trust creates an environment where people feel safe to share ideas, admit mistakes, and challenge each other constructively. Without trust, relationships become shallow and fragile, incapable of withstanding challenges. Dalio's approach to fostering meaningful relationships also involves surrounding yourself with people who challenge and inspire you. He valued relationships that pushed him out of his comfort zone, forcing him to confront his biases and limitations. At Bridgewater, this meant hiring people with diverse perspectives who weren't afraid to question his decisions. Dalio recounts how these challenging relationships, while sometimes uncomfortable, were essential for personal growth and better decision-making. This principle is reflected in history, such as in the dynamic between Franklin D. Roosevelt and Winston Churchill during World War II. Though their styles and priorities often clashed, their mutual respect and willingness to challenge each other's ideas forged one of the most effective alliances in modern history. Similarly, you must seek out relationships that push you to think deeper, work harder, and grow beyond your current capabilities. Building meaningful relationships also requires aligning with people who share your values. Dalio stresses that relationships built on shared principles and mutual respect are more likely to endure and thrive. He advises being intentional about the connections you nurture, ensuring they align with your long-term goals and values. This is not about avoiding disagreements or differences. In fact, Dalio welcomes those, but about ensuring that the foundational values, such as integrity, honesty, and respect, are shared. This alignment creates a sense of purpose and cohesion that strengthens the relationship over time. To foster meaningful relationships, you must invest time and effort. Dalio often emphasized the importance of listening deeply and communicating openly. He recounts how at Bridgewater, frequent one-on-one conversations and feedback sessions created a culture of understanding and empathy. These interactions weren't just about resolving issues, they were about building deeper connections. This mirrors the practices outlined in Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, where Carnegie stresses the importance of active listening, showing genuine interest in others, and expressing appreciation. Building meaningful relationships is not about grand gestures. It is about consistently showing up, being present, and demonstrating that you value the other person. Dalio also warns against prioritizing shallow or transactional relationships. He argues that such connections may provide short-term benefits but rarely lead to lasting success or fulfillment. He recounts how Bridgewater thrived not because of surface-level networking, but because of the deep, meaningful bonds its employees formed with each other. These bonds created a level of trust and collaboration that couldn't be replicated by mere professional alliances. You must take the same approach, focusing on quality over quantity when it comes to your relationships. Invest in the people who matter most, and be willing to let go of connections that drain your energy or conflict with your values. Meaningful relationships are not without challenges. They require vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to work through conflict. Dalio recounts how some of his strongest relationships were forged during times of disagreement and struggle. These moments of friction, when approached with respect and a shared commitment to resolution, strengthened the bonds rather than breaking them. This reinforces the idea that conflict, when handled constructively, can deepen relationships rather than damage them. You must approach challenges in your relationships with the same mindset, viewing them as opportunities to build greater understanding and trust. Dalio's lesson is a reminder that success is not measured solely by achievements, but by the quality of the connections you forge along the way. To foster meaningful relationships, prioritize trust and integrity. Seek out people who challenge and inspire you, and invest in connections that align with your values. Approach every interaction as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship, and don't shy away from the work required to maintain it. The relationships you build will shape not only your success, but also your fulfillment and impact. Surround yourself with people who make you better, and be the kind of person who does the same for others. Lesson 9. Test and refine principles. Principles are not rigid rules etched in stone. They are living, evolving tools that guide your decisions and actions. Dalio emphasizes that just as you grow, learn, and adapt, your principles must follow suit. This philosophy became a cornerstone of Bridgewater's success, where the principles governing the firm's operations were treated as dynamic frameworks, continuously refined through experience and feedback. Dalio's approach to principles mirrors the agile mindset found in software development, where systems are constantly tested, refined, and optimized based on real-world feedback. To succeed in any aspect of life, you must embrace this iterative process, viewing your principles not as fixed commandments, but as flexible tools that evolve with your understanding and circumstances. Dalio recounts how Bridgewater's principles were born from hard-earned lessons, many of which stemmed from failures. Each mistake was analyzed to uncover its root cause, and the insights gained were codified into principles that could prevent similar errors in the future. Over time, these principles were tested and refined, creating a feedback loop that improved the firm's decision-making and operational efficiency. For example, after a significant error in assessing market conditions, Dalio and his team didn't just address the immediate issue, they scrutinized the underlying processes and updated their principles to account for previously overlooked factors. This process of constant iteration ensured that their principles stayed relevant and effective in an ever-changing environment. The necessity of refining principles is evident in other fields as well. Consider the scientific method, where hypotheses are tested, data is gathered, and theories are adjusted based on results. This same process applies to your life. You must test your principles against reality, gather feedback from outcomes, and refine them accordingly. This approach is particularly relevant in the rapidly changing world of business and technology, where sticking to outdated methods can lead to obsolescence. Companies like Amazon thrive because of their willingness to iterate on their strategies and principles, adapting to new markets and technologies while remaining true to their core mission. Just as Amazon constantly evolves its practices, you must treat your principles as tools to be sharpened and improved. Refining principles requires humility and a willingness to admit when they no longer serve you. Dalio's approach reflects a deep understanding that no principle, no matter how effective it once was, is immune to the passage of time and the impact of new knowledge. He encourages you to regularly review your principles, seeking feedback from others and evaluating their effectiveness in light of new experiences. This practice aligns with the concept of Kaizen, continuous improvement, found in Japanese business philosophy, where even successful practices are subjected to scrutiny and refinement. You must adopt this mindset, questioning whether your principles remain valid and adjusting them as necessary to stay aligned with your goals and the realities of your environment. Feedback is a critical element in refining principles. Dalio highlights the importance of seeking input from others, particularly those who challenge your assumptions and provide diverse perspectives. At Bridgewater, this meant fostering an environment of radical transparency, where employees were encouraged to critique the firm's principles and propose improvements. This open exchange of ideas ensured that the principles guiding their decisions were robust and inclusive of multiple viewpoints. Similarly, you should invite feedback from trusted individuals in your life, whether colleagues, mentors, or friends. Be willing to listen, even when the feedback is uncomfortable, and use it to identify blind spots or areas for improvement. Testing principles also involves taking calculated risks. Dalio's iterative approach required him to apply principles in real-world scenarios and observe the results. When principles failed to produce the desired outcomes, he didn't abandon them entirely but refined them based on the new information. This mindset is evident in Thomas Edison's approach to invention, where countless iterations and adjustments ultimately led to the creation of the light bulb. Like Edison, you must embrace the process of trial and error, recognizing that each failed experiment brings you closer to the optimal solution. To apply this lesson in your life, start by documenting your principles. Write down the guiding beliefs and rules that shape your decisions and actions, then test them in everyday situations. Regularly revisit these principles, asking yourself whether they still align with your goals and whether they are producing the outcomes you desire. Seek feedback from others, especially those who bring different perspectives, and be willing to adapt your principles based on what you learn. This ongoing process ensures that your principles remain relevant, effective, and aligned with your evolving understanding of the world. Dalio's lesson on testing and refining principles underscores the importance of adaptability and continuous improvement. Principles are not static ideals. They are tools that must grow and change as you do. By treating your principles as dynamic frameworks, you ensure that your decisions remain grounded in reality and aligned with your goals. Regularly review, test, and refine your principles, and you will create a foundation for sustained growth and success. The process may require effort and humility, but the rewards, clarity, consistency, and resilience are well worth it. Conclusion. Dalio's principles are a roadmap for living a deliberate, reflective, and purpose-driven life. He challenges you to treat every setback as an opportunity for growth, build systems that enhance decision-making, and foster environments of radical honesty and respect. The lessons in this book resonate with themes from Atomic Habits by James Clear and Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, which emphasize the power of systems and vulnerability in personal and professional success. Always remember that principles are your compass, and by refining and living them, you design a life of meaning, achievement, and impact. The end.